Hey internet, my name is the Nobody, and today I'm making a pretty quick collaboration video with DDJ MGTOW, the author of the book called The Feminist Lie, and he also happens to be a paralegal. The video is going to be about certain ways today, and we're obviously not going to cover all the topics, but certain ways today men are discriminated against.
Hello, everybody.
Incredible, just incredible intro. So anyway, DDJ, you said there were basically four main points you wanted to cover about why we're not really winning anything.
Yeah, I mean, in very general terms, I think if we want to summarize the four main reasons we're not really winning the war against feminism, so to speak, is basically because number one, the feminists exercise double standards. Number two, they run the media, and they're passing the gynocentric laws. And the reality is that at the end of the day, there isn't really a voice opposing feminism because feminism has effectively silenced everybody. So to start off with the first one, feminist double standards, we see this throughout society where, feminists want equality when it benefits them, but they don't want any of the responsibilities that go with it. So, for example, you see these articles online where feminists will be like, well, we want the man to pay for the date and we want the man to pay for the romantic getaway, but we want to be treated like equals.
I saw an article where it was a feminist basically feminist protesting the female draft, like saying, "Don't send my daughters to war."
Yeah, and I mean, when they first started talking seriously about that recently, that's absolutely correct. They don't want the draft. In fact, they said, if this is equality, I don't want it. And a lot of feminists on Twitter, on social media, like Facebook, they all came out and said it.
Then they're not going to give up their vote though. They're just going to say, "I don't want the draft." They're not going to, they're not going to pay for it. They're not going to give up the vote. They're just going to say, "I don't want the responsibility."
But you see, here's the thing: it doesn't just affect the vote. In the United States, if you're 18 years old and you're male and you do not sign up for selective service, in other words, if you don't sign up for the draft, not only are you not allowed to vote, you don't get financial aid for school, so you don't get grants or loans. In addition to that, you're barred from working in a federal job. Women don't have that. I mean, women are privileged when it comes to being able to have that right or those three rights without the responsibility of the draft.
Won't you also go to like prison by the age of 26?
I don't know about
and
that.
I heard you'll go to prison and you'll be fined about even up to $250,000.
That's not something I've heard. I don't know much about that. It's something that I'll definitely look into, though. But then, you also see when it comes to double standards, you see when it comes to child custody, like in the context of divorce, women want to have sole custody of children, or they want to be the primary residential custodian of the children. They don't want to share that time with the father equally, even though they both created that child together. And again, you can go online and you can find articles where women are like, yeah, I don't want to have equal time with the father because I feel lonely. It's never about the child. It's never about how important it is to the child. It's always about how important it is to the woman. So, even though the family courts in the United States are supposed to consider the best interest of the child standard, it's all about the woman. It's all about her feelings. And really, at the end of the day, they don't give a damn about the child.
Yeah, and when it comes to these things, a lot of these things, they basically get, they get their double standards. They obviously get passed into law, or even if they're not passed into law, like I don't know, like child support. Not not child support, custody, right? That's not I'm not sure if that's really in a law, but there's still the sentencing gap. The sentencing gap. Now that's obviously not in. There's no law about the sentencing.
Well, let's take a step back.
But it still happens.
Take a step back and let's talk about child custody for a minute. There used to be laws that feminists did get passed called the tender years doctrine,
I heard of that.
Where women, where women were considered to be the better caretakers, and so women would be the primary custodians. In other words, they would get awarded the children. But here's the interesting thing. Women get custody, at least in the United States, and I'm gonna limit my discussion to the United States because that's what I know best.
Yes.
So women get custody about 85% of the time in divorce court. However, according to the CDC, that's the Centers for Disease Control, they found that women in the United States are the number one abuser of children. They're the number one abuser of neglect, sexual abuse, and physical abuse of children. So even though living with a single mother is a risk factor, it's so well documented it's considered a risk factor, the family courts still award children primary custody, even though if they were awarded to the biological father, the risk factor goes down dramatically.
Yeah, and
So,
the problem with these things is then they're not going to go away. They're only going to get worse because women are the majority voters. They're not going to vote to give up their own privileges. That just doesn't happen.
That's not even, that doesn't even weigh into it anymore, because they have to word the laws in a way that they're not discriminatory. But what they do is, the way they get around it is, feminists control the entire family court system throughout the country. So the majority of the family law judges are feminists. The majority of the attorneys, whether they represent the man or the woman, are feminists. The parenting investigators, the guardian ad litems, they're almost always feminists. The family court facilitators are almost always feminists. This is rank and file. So it would basically be like a man getting a fair trial in a family court system. And I say this in my book, Shill Alert, Feminist Lie. I say this in my book, and it is that a man getting justice in a family court would be like a black man going to a rural county where the judge, the jury, and the attorneys are all members of the Ku Klux Klan. They're a racist organization. And there's just no way it's not going to happen. The guy's going to get lynched even if he makes it through the trial. So you have to understand that when you walk into a courtroom, you are walking into the den of the enemy. These women hate you. They hate you because they believe in this mythical patriarchy, which, by the way, there's no science that supports a patriarchy that exists for the express purpose of oppressing women, with the sole exception of being Islamic communities that follow Sharia law. You have this misandric system, this man-hating system that you have to walk into, and you expect justice, and the reality is you're never going to get it. Now, when you were talking about that, you were talking about how women get lighter court sentences for committing crimes than men. That's absolutely the case, but it's not just in the United States. They found this to be in Australia, in the UK, in Spain, all over Europe.
That's probably in every country.
Well, and feminists have been fantastic in propaganda. They control the media, and what I mean by that is that feminists are allowed to have a media platform in a way that men could never have. And you see this because feminists shit out these stupid ass campaigns one after another, and you look at them and you're like, "Are you insane? Oh wait, yeah, you're a feminist. You are." Let me give you some examples.
Well, they're openly misandric on shows like The View. I mean, they'll advocate for violence against men as a joke.
Well, not only do they advocate violence against men on shows like The View, but they advocate them everywhere. If you look at commercials, for example, television commercials have subtle man-hating. There was a Campbell's soup commercial that showed how a woman abandoned her sick husband so that she can go do her thing, and he had to cook for himself because he was ill and he needed the assistance, and she's just like, yeah, I'm out of here. And feminists rallied out against that because they're like, wait a minute, that depicts us as bad. So they rallied, and Campbell's soup actually pulled that commercial. But you see this all throughout the media.
If men said it's misandric, I bet they wouldn't have pulled the commercial.
No, they just say, "Oh, you're just a weak man." I mean, look at for example, look at the Wonder Woman movie, right? Switch the word man or switch the word woman only to white only, and now see how socially acceptable it is to have a white only viewing of Wonder Woman. It's segregation. It's segregation, and pure and simple, it's segregation. That is discrimination against men. That is misandry. That is man-hating, and it is clear and in your face. But yet, every time women hear about it, they try to shame the man. They try to deflect it back. But even more so, let's talk about the wider range of how one-sided the media is when it comes to feminist agendas. Feminists get media platforms for almost everything they do. There are articles you can read about feminists who think that stare rape is a real thing, that if you stare or oogle a woman that you find attractive, you are supposedly raping her, and they want to criminalize it. There was another article about a woman complaining that office temperatures were too low, and so that was a form of oppression. And she actually was given Yeah, they made a video. They actually professionally made a video trying to promote this as though it was an actual thing. But then you have stuff that's more damaging. For example, manspreading. A guy sits on a subway or he sits on a bus, and he's trying to spread his legs slightly just so he has more room for his testicles, because his testicles or his genitalia are uncomfortable. Not necessarily taking up the whole bus seat or whatever, but just a little bit, and they call it manspreading.
Yeah, I heard.
And
I heard two men were arrested for that in New York.
well, and that's kind of where I want to get to, is that this is where there's no outcry against it. Nobody speaks out against it in the media. They just go along with it, and any opposition is kind of token. It's like a pretense. It's softball, and then you get these laws changed, and the women run the legal system. Women vote in the United States. They're 52 to 54% of all voters currently, and so feminists run the
something
electorate.
to mention is that if they're 54% of voters, that's not a 4% difference. That's an 8% difference. That's huge, but that would mean that men are 46%.
Right, but here's the thing:
that's a huge difference. Politicians are gonna pander
right
to women specifically.
But women have been co-opting men to support their goals for a long time.
Yeah,
so you get so not only
a
are
lot of men will vote for gun. It's not just the women voting for gynocentric laws. It's like half the men or something.
yeah, they're manginas and they're cucks, and they just want to get laid, and their girlfriend's like, oh, you need to make me happy, vote this way, and they're okay, I will.
Even before,
my dick's in the purse.
Even
right.
before women got the vote, there was like worry about women coercing their men to vote how they want.
Exactly. But when you talk about manspreading, yeah, they made laws against it. There were people being arrested for it. They had warnings on public transportation for it in New York and in Los Angeles and other places. And men were actually being harassed and jailed for this. They were criminalizing this, and it was one-sided, because if you look at like women on public transportation, they sit in one seat. They put their purse in the seat next to them. They put their bag or their backpack in the seat in front of them, and they spread out, and they take 2, 3, and 4 seats. And there's images of this all over the internet. Yet they're not criminalized for doing exactly what they're doing to men. And so this is clear discrimination, and you see this. And so and let's take it a step further. In the state of California right now, they are actually looking at passing a law that criminalizes consensual sex. And what they're trying to say is that if your condom falls off, or if your condom breaks while you're having consensual sex with your partner, that is now rape. And they're defining it under rape. And there was a press release from
I
some.
think I heard of something similar.
This is from the press release was released. I think it was on the 15th to the 16th of May, by some lady named Garcia, who is a legislator for the state of California. And they're trying to criminalize this, and they think, and here's the thing, they think that men have some conspiracy to whip off their condoms so they can get pregnant. But if you talk to any single man out there, the last thing they want is to accidentally
the last thing they want. It's absolutely. It's not. I don't think it's because they actually believe any of this crap. They just want to hook up other women. They just want to get. They want to get the.
Well, it's discrimination. It's discrimination.
Yeah, they want to discriminate. They want to get the rape statistics aren't high enough. They want to make them higher, so they've got more things to complain about. So they've got more jobs.
Well, it has nothing to do with jobs. It has to do with oppression of men. This is a power issue. They're doing exactly what Hitler did. Hitler demonized the Jews to give himself power, and he created an enemy. And he wasn't the first one to do this, but he's the most prominent example that everybody knows. What you do is you create a fake enemy, and then you pretend to be the hero fighting the enemy. And that's exactly what feminism has done. And that you see, they create this mythical patriarchy that doesn't exist, and then they fight against it, and they tell everybody that they're doing it. And again, like with the state of California, a lot of people who might be listening to this stream might say, well, this can't happen here. Well, guess what? It's already happened. In Sweden, they've had these laws on the books for almost 10 years to demonize many men in the country, but the most prominent example was Julian Assange. Julian Assange was accused of rape because he had sex with 2 women. It was consensual at all times, and he didn't use a condom. And in one of the cases, the woman actually went to the police department and said, look, this isn't fair. It's not ethical. You need to not do that. And the cops just ignored her, and they went after him anyway. And as we know, Julian Assange has been in this embassy for 7 years. But here's the thing. The prosecutors never charged Julian Assange with a crime. Nobody ever charged him with a crime. He was just under investigation. But they wanted him so badly that they issued a warrant for his arrest because they wanted to oppress him because he was a powerful, strong man who spoke the truth. And they couldn't have that, so they had to control him. And the way they did it was they tried to manipulate this horrible law into oppressing him. And that's the tool that they attempted. And they failed. It took them 3 prosecutors to get him to do it. And as you know from the recent news, they've recently backed off those charges. But feminists in the UK are still pushing for him to be arrested. And the United Kingdom is so cucked and gynocentric, it's not even funny.
It's really tough to find out what Western nation is more cucked than the other. They're all just cucked in slightly different ways.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But you see, the problem is, and this leads us to the 4th issue, the problem is that nobody holds these feminists accountable for their hypocrisy. Nobody speaks out against them. Feminists have been so effective in silencing opposition, and I say this in my book too, that the only people that have stood against feminists are those people online. So people like, your channel, a lot of YouTube channels, bloggers, you have internet journalists, and people like myself who are authors. But again, this is a new thing. Like I wrote my book for the express purpose because there was no opposition to feminism. If you go to gender studies or you go to, well, let's just say, like, for example, you discuss political ideologies, you'll have conservatives and you'll have liberals. If you want to discuss communism, you'll have voices who oppose communism and voices who support communism. Feminism is one of the few ideologies in the world right now that really doesn't have a valid opposing voice. So you have people who support...
That's not even mentioning first and second wave feminism. That's just really focusing on third wave feminism that other than the internet doesn't have much of an opposing voice. I mean, just try bringing up first or second wave feminism. Even online, you're going to have a hard time finding an opposition to that.
Well, the problem with first and second wave feminism is that it's slipped out of institutional memory. I mean, if you look at Antifa today, like all the crimes that Antifa is doing, that's what first and second wave feminists were. But people don't want to discuss that because they don't want to discuss feminism's history of terrorism. And that's really what it was. It was terrorism. And you see that today with Antifa. The same tactics that were used by feminists in first wave in 1910, 1920, those tactics, they're still being used today. In fact, feminism is the reason that the prohibition laws got passed. And prohibition was horrible for the United States. It got so many people killed and murdered, and it was just a horrible 10 or 11 years of unnecessarily criminalizing something that men do. And now today in 2017, they're trying to police the internet. They're trying to say that saying bad words on the internet is the equivalent of crime. I think there's a police department in the United Kingdom that actually is spending $1.2 million for the express purpose of investigating people who are mean to feminists on the internet.
And
really?
I wonder where that money came from, men or women.
Yeah. There's a really easy solution for this. If you're a feminist and you don't like what somebody says, go the fuck away. Don't watch their video. Don't subscribe to their Twitter feed.
And
don't look at their Facebook posts. Just move on to something else.
Don't make your evil patriarchal oppressors pay for it either.
Yeah, that's the point. Look, we're all responsible for what we do. If you walk into a bad neighborhood at 3 a.m. and you get victimized, the first thing the police are going to do when they get there is they're going to ask you, what the hell were you doing here at 3 o'clock in the morning to begin with? You shouldn't have been here.
Well,
right?
No, because logic is victim blaming.
Well, no, logic isn't victim blaming. Logic is logic. Hypocrisy and bigotry is what defines that as victim blaming. And that's the thing. And people don't call feminism out for it. Feminism was never about equality. It was always about female superiority. It was always about gynocentrism. It was always about keeping men down. And again, I go into that in the history chapter 2 of my book. I go back to first wave feminists back in the 1800s where they were racist, they were bigots. In the early 1900s, they were genocidal when it came to African Americans. And you see this, and it's all the way through. It's female superiority all the way through. And anytime somebody speaks out against them, that's when all of a sudden, oh, you just hate women. Well, no, I don't hate women. I hate feminist ideology. In fact, if you look at it, though, even though feminists are still trying to get these crazy laws in place, women were the reason that Trump made president. It had nothing to do with the men. Women made Trump president because they're just sick of the feminist bigotry. And I think that even if the more attention we bring to the feminist bigotry that's out there, and the more attention the more times we call this out, I think that feminism will fade eventually. But it's not going to go without a fight because, like I said, we have feminists in the United States. Feminists run every family court system in the state, or in every state in the United States, and they're in the federal government. Their lobbying organizations are super powerful and super rich, and they're not just in the United States; they're across the globe. Feminism, like Milo Yiannopoulos says, feminism is a cancer, and unfortunately, it's a cancer that has affected most of the globe.
Yeah, but those women that voted for Trump, they're more on they're more modern traditionalists than like real anti-feminists. If
Well,
the best thing we can hope for is they're against most third wave feminism, but you're not going to find many women.
I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think that when I say that they're anti-feminist, I don't mean they are anti-feminist activists, and I don't consider myself an anti-feminist activist. I just think that when it comes to feminism, these women see the bigotry for what it is, and they don't subscribe to it. I don't necessarily think that they're just anti-feminist. I think that they're just like, wow, this is insane. I need to stay away from it.
Yeah, but my point is that they're not going to really fix anything. Then they're not going to go back to all the laws. They're going to find the ones that piss people off the most. They're going to find a couple uncomfortable ones, change it, and then see, hey, not all feminism is bad. Just this one. Now let's go back to men taking care of us again.
I think at some level you're going to see that, but again, you're talking about return to a traditional patriarchy that we had in the United States, and I think that the second that you start taking out the welfare state, and the second that you change the welfare laws that require more accountability, you're going to see more and more women return to this idea of, oh, I need a man to take care of me. And for anybody listening to your stream, what that'll probably happen, the way that'll look first is women will try to sperm jack you to get pregnant by you so that they can hook you in for child support.
Yeah, but as long as the women vote, you're not going to get rid of the welfare state.
Well, I think at some level, that might be the case. But I also think, and I said this before, I also think that if you turned in the United States, if you made Election Day or Voting Day a national holiday, and you said, look, this is now a federal holiday, I think that you would see far more men vote. And I think that you would see a huge change in the way things happen, because as a national holiday, all of a sudden the feminist hypocrisy gets exposed. Because you see, the reason why a lot of men don't vote is because they're at work and they just don't have time for it, and their wives and significant others are pressuring them to do 20 other things, so they just never have that opportunity to vote. I think that if you made it a national holiday, that would change the voting. Now, in the meantime, I think that if you are a man in the United States, I think that the best way to combat this in the short term is that on Election Day, you plan for that day off. You talk to your boss 6 months ahead of time. You use a vacation day, and you take that day off so that you can vote. And I think you take the whole day, and because I think that it's that important. As United States citizens, voting is one of the few powers that we still have.
I agree. And anyway, DJ, I think we're gonna have to cut this one a wee bit short. I've got work tomorrow, but it was a great talk, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, and I look forward to talking to you again, Nobody. Take care.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, guys, for watching. Bye.